everyone, Armored Pants here, and I have another video for you. This is the American line Tier 7 Heavy, the T29, and we're going to have a look at all of the details, as we always do. We of course will have a look at the tech spec, and we'll use blitzhanger.com for that. But before we get into that, I thought I'd take just 1 minute to talk about the movement of players from Tier 6 to Tier 7 along this line. This is a tough step up. It's not like the previous tiers where you had a relatively easy step up from Tier 5 to Tier 6. This is very tough, and there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, you're going up into, let's say, what is the bottom high tier, if you want to put it that way. And I know a lot of subscribers and that have asked me to do this video because they've been struggling with this tank. And you're really going into to play the top tiers, because when you're up tier to Tier 8, you're playing against some of the best players there are in Blitz. Also at the moment, since the introduction of the missile tanks, we have a lot of the top tier players, top 9, Tier 9, Tier 10 players playing in Tier 7 because they just don't want to play against missile tanks. And the way to avoid that is to go down to Tier 7, because you're not going to be up tier to Tier 9 there, right? So they want to do that, and therefore you're getting a lot of Tier 10 really skilled players playing in Tier 7 now. And then to top it all off, on top of that, it's also a very different tank. So the move from Tier 5 to Tier 6 was relatively easy because the tanks are very similar. This tank is very, very different. And this is an issue because you need to change your gameplay. You need to adapt your gameplay accordingly. This tank has very different characteristics and the gameplay is very different, and I think that's another reason why a lot of players are struggling as they jump from the M6 up to T29. But the good news is, help us at hand, we're going to have a look at all of these different differences, etc., and make some recommendations on how to play this tank. Now let's look at the tank specifications and how to set it up to utilize its characteristics. I mean, this is a good heavy tank, but you need to play to its strengths. So let's maximize those. Let's run Coca-Cola, a case of Coca-Cola and approved fuel. That's going to get the maximum performance for us. There's two gun options, 90mm and 105mm. You need to get to 105mm first. You also need to upgrade a turret. So get those first is key. I'm going to explain why. Firstly, in terms of pen, the AP is only 160 on the 90mm gun. It's not enough. You need that 198mm of pen, which you get with gun rammer. But actually, I would use calibrated shells to get it up to 208mm of pen. That is key. Also, the turret is key because you're going to play a lot of hull down, which we're going to discuss later on. Muzzle velocity is 229 with supercharge 1535 with APCR, so note the difference in shell speed. When you're using calibrated shells, you get 9.6 second reload, which is slow for only 310 damage points, but you really do need that extra pen, so go with calibrated shells. 0.342 dispersion with refined gun, that's basically your maximum deviation. It's okay, but I would use refined gun. Also, it's a heavy tank. You don't fire as much when moving as you do in other tank types, so I would use that too. Now, here's the thing. Gun depression is 10 degrees at 15 degrees of elevation, so it has good gun alignment. But it also has this fantastic turret armor when you get the upgraded turret. So we're going to take note of that for later on. Now, it does 35 kilometers per hour forward, 14 in reverse. But here's the thing. Unlike the tanks before it, the power to weight ratio is very bad. It's poor. Traverse speed is also poor, and that is a big difference to the tanks that you've played. Before this, they had great power to weight ratio and great traverse. They were great brawlers. So then we start to see some of the pain points with this tank. So let's take a look at those in more detail as we look at the armor. So we see here our next pain point, right? When you look at the frontal armor, you see that it doesn't have frontal armor on the hull. So therefore, you're not going to be able to bounce shots off the front of it as you have been doing on the T1 Heavy and the M6, in Tiers 5 and 6. So therefore, it's different gameplay. You're not going to get bounces off the front of this. Even when you're top tier, you're not going to get bounces. You can easily be penned front on. So that's pain point number 2, right? You don't have your speed, you don't have your traverse, and you don't have your frontal armor. So that's why you need to adapt the gameplay. You need to change your gameplay. The good news is that the gameplay for this hold down gameplay you need to do in this tank is exactly the same gameplay you need for the tanks in Tier 8, 9 and 10. So getting the skills here is going to put you in good stead as you move forward up the tiers. But right now it's a pain point because you're going to have to adapt your play accordingly. You're going to have to change your play, and of course I think that's one of the reasons why so many players struggle when they move from the M6 to T29. Completely different tank in terms of how to play it. You can side scrape in it, that's for sure. But you know, as you come out to side scrape, because you're very vulnerable on the bottom part of your hull, you can still get penned if the other player knows what he's doing. So it's not as easy as the relative armor numbers would seem to suggest. But the good news is, guys, that there is a tactic for this tank, a tactic which serves it very well, whether it's in its own tier or even up tiered, and that is going hull down. The 10 degrees gun depression and that troll turret armor when you have the upgraded turret, which is why I suggested get the turret and the top gun first, because it's key to playing this tank well. The tank is slow anyway, so you can get the engine and the tracks and all of that later on, but you need to get the top turret and gun first, because going hull down in this tank is key. If we look here, we see even when up tiered, hull down you are almost impossible to pen. If you don't know what hull down is, it basically means hiding the hull of the tank, just popping your turret over. And of course it's the most effective when you have a tank that has good gun depression. This tank does have good gun depression, has 10 degrees gun depression, so you could pop your turret over, put shots into the reds, and you will bounce shots in this with this turret. And we're going to have a look at that in the gameplay, exactly what you should be doing in this tank. If you go front on in this tank, even if you're top tiered, you're going to be penned. Even without a big gun, even your own tier mediums and light tanks are going to pen you front on. It has weak frontal armor. You need to protect that, and therefore going hull down is key to this tank. If you look at the tactics here, it says, well, nothing is recommended. Okay, so therefore you're kind of thinking, if you're just got this tank, okay, what am I going to do? If nothing is recommended, does that mean it's not good at anything? Well, it is good at one thing, and I'll say it again, it's going hull down. So in terms of your tactics, you need to look at the map that you're on, and you need to not just go to heavy corridor where you might go or where other heavies are going. You need to select where you can position this tank to maximize its one great strength, which is going hull down. So on this map here, Yamamoto Harbor, we know that the A channel is usually the heavy channel. But I know that going there, I'm just going to get smashed. Because even though I'm top tier, going up against their heavies on that side, I am going to get penned. I'm not going to be able to utilize the strengths of this tank. So I therefore decide to go to C. And of course I'm informing my team as well. And we've got a good team, so they come with me. And the reason for that is that going to C here on this map allows me to take a position that utilizes the strengths of this tank. So you need to, in a way, go against other things that we've said on the channel before, and not play the heavy tank role as you might always play it. So for example, if you're in a Tiger 1 or Tiger P, you would probably go down the A channel, right? But here, I want to take up a position where I can utilize the strengths of this tank. And there we see it. Right, our first replay, just look at this turret, 2 bounces. Now of course, look, I know I'm top tier, but you will get those bounces even when you are bottom tier, because this turret it really hardly can be penned. There are of course some tanks, and of course big guns will fire HE at you, so Rim Borsig could hit you with HE, but he's going to low alpha roll you, and sometimes he's not going to do any damage at all. So, you know, you can really reap a lot of benefits in this tank if you get into a position like this. You see how many bounces have we got already? I'm up to over 1.2k of bounce damage already. And as we've discussed before on channel, bouncing, that's my max roll there by the way, 325 just with standard AP. So that was APCR. I switched up because I wanted to pen the top of that Tiger P. Switch back to AP for the side shot on the IS. Now look at the difference when the front is exposed. Now you see I get penned, and I get penned easily, even by the Panther, which doesn't have the biggest pen numbers in that tier. I'm rolling back, and the Tiger P doesn't have the gun depression to get over and put a shot into the bottom of the tank, so he gets another bounce. But you see there, when he's able to push on and I have to roll back as I'm being pushed onto here by a lot of reds. There are reds just, this is like the Spartans at Thermopylae, right? So I'm just kind of holding this channel here on my own, and they're trying to swamp me. They push me back a bit, and that's why I got penned. You saw the difference though. When you are exposed, the front of your tank is exposed, you will be penned. When it's only the turret, you will bounce the shots. It's almost impossible to pen. We see there the shots on the KV2. Just using AP rounds, I'm able to pen them, and that's because I'm using supercharge and using refined gun, maximizing my muzzle velocity, which helps me to pen, because there's a direct correlation between muzzle velocity and penetration in the penetration formula, and the algorithm which is run, and also then using refined gun, I am reducing the dispersion, therefore reducing the maximum deviation I can be from the target. Finally I get the cap. Took a long time, but I was patient, I didn't panic. I utilized the strengths of this tank, and I was able to just keep myself in this hold down position for almost the entire game so far. Again, putting one in, using the gun depression again, and now we've won this game. So the game is over now. It looked a bit ropey there for a while, but now the game is over. We are 4v2, and you know, we're going to clear off these two guys now. I was talking earlier about bouncing shots. Bouncing shots is important not just for you but for your team, because every shot that you bounce is a shot that might have penned your team members and therefore reduced your overall team hit pool points. So bouncing shots is really not just good individual play, but it's great for your team, because the shots that are bouncing from you are shots that are not going towards them or penning them. And you see here in this game now, we have a 5.7k net damage game. And that's impressive at any tier, guys. If you do that at tier 10, it's going to be impressive. But at tier 7, that's fantastic. So let's have a look at a recap or a summary of this tank. So look, you know, it is a good heavy tank, and it's perfect practice for the higher tiers that follow it, but you really need to adapt your gameplay moving up from the M6. And it is a difficult jump, right? It's different gameplay, there's different tier, different players. You're going to be playing against some of the better players, etc. It's difficult, I understand that. But you need to, you know, practice going hold down. Because if you train hard, you fight easy. If you train easy, you fight hard. Get the top gun and turret. It is key. It's important for that tougher armor and important for the pen that you need, particularly if you're up tiered. 9.69 seconds is your reload with calibrated shells, and you need calibrated shells because you have low pen numbers. Turret armor is troll, though. You saw that in the game. Get hold down. It is the key to success in this tank. It's really its only really defining key characteristic, because you get pen front on even when you're top tier, as you saw in that game, easily. Gun alignment is excellent. Utilize that. Basically, that allows you to do hold down. There's no point going hold down if you've no gun depression, but you do in this tank. And map awareness, positioning is key in this tank. If you don't find a good hold down position, you're going to be in experience problems. But if you do, even being up tiered is okay, because that right position will allow you to bounce shots. Even tier 8s cannot pen that turret if you're hold down. Therefore, the first 30 seconds is key. Look at the map and decide, where can I go where I can get into a good hold down position, bounce some shots and put some damage in on the enemy. If you make the wrong decision, then chances are you're going to have a bad game. So that key decision making first 30 seconds, guys. So anyway, cheers Mush, thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful, I hope you found it enjoyable, and I guess all that remains for me to say is pants off.
you.